You guys have no idea how much I've been waiting to talk about this one. This is arguably one of the best modern SpongeBob episodes, period. And we're going to talk about why. What's up, what's happening, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Animation Station, your number one stop destination for anything and everything animation, including SpongeBob with a pineapple under the sea. We're doing a bit of a quiet voice one for this time because it's almost 10 o'clock at night, so gotta keep our voice down. So, in this episode, Mr. Krabs decides to turn the Krusty Krab into a hotel because he thinks he can make more money out of it. And their first customer is Patrick. And Squidward is forced to do all these things because of the plaque of an oath that Krabs ripped off of the hotel that he stayed at that gave him this idea. And then it drives Squidward to boiling point, and then he decides to get revenge by quitting and, giving Krabs a taste of his own medicine. Which is really what makes this episode so great. Like, it's Krabs getting a taste of his own medicine, and it's Squidward just relishing and, paying him back for all the misery he put him through. There were so many highlights I could point out from this episode, but there are 6 in particular for this that I want to talk about. The first one is when Patrick first enters into Krusty Towers. First, he doesn't know it's a hotel, which is already pretty funny. And then Squidward tells him he has to write his name. And what does he do? He draws a plane. Classic Patrick humor. Just absolutely hilarious. And then from there, what was the next one? Oh wait, no, first was the plaque. It was the plaque. First one's the plaque, then it's the plane. I'm just gonna scroll through them, I'm sorry. Just way too many to remember. And then highlight number 3 would be rocks. when Squidward takes Patrick's bags up using the employee stairs, and he asks, "What's in it? Rocks?" And then one of the bags falls open. It's literally rocks. Just more classic Patrick humor. And then the next highlight goes to when Squidward gets his revenge. That classic gag with the toenail clippings and nose hair Krabby Patty. And he makes Krabs eat it. And then SpongeBob tries to trick him into eating it, and it works. Krabs eats it, and Squidward falls over laughing. It's funny. It's that kind of gross humor that just works. And then the next one is this dark joke. Like, this is probably one of the best in all of SpongeBob, where SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs show up to Squidward's mom's house in ski masks, and it looks like they're going to kidnap her because Squidward wants them to make him cookies. And there's a bag in the trunk, and SpongeBob starts beating it with a shovel, making you think that, they knocked the lady out and are stuffing her in the trunk. But then it turns out it's just Mr. Krabs' laundry, and she gets to ride up front, and they make the cookies. Again, it's one of those dark jokes that just really works for SpongeBob. And then the next highlight is painting the room. All the different styles they come up with are great, and then it just ends up right back where it started. Because, as Squidward says, nothing like getting back to the basics. This freaking episode, man. And then the last one... Oh, no, that is the last one. And then the Krusty Krab is destroyed in a great way. And Mr. Krabs realizes that the money is supposed to go... Well, the real money's in the hospital business. Which is debatable, but okay. And it ends with Mr. Krabs telling them all to pack their bags because they're going to medical school. Overall, this episode is just fantastic. Like, it's just as amazing as you heard. It's incredibly enjoyable and entertaining all the way through, extremely rewatchable, and definitely a highlight of Season 4. Final verdict for Krusty Towers is going to be an easy 10 out of 10. Easily one of the best of the season. Okay, let's move on to Mrs. Puff, You're Fired. Okay, this one isn't as great as the other one, but it's still a pretty great episode. In this episode, Mrs. Puff is, well, as the title suggests, fired from her job because Mr. Fitz thinks it's the teacher's fault and not SpongeBob's fault that he keeps failing. So, in place of him, we get a drill sergeant who is supposed to be the finest instructor that the board can afford. And at first, after a long growing process, it looks like it's going pretty great. But then one bad thing happens and then it's back to the status quo. So, once again, we have 6 highlights to talk about in this episode, and they're all fantastic. First one, the driving instructor. Just everything about this guy is great. Actually, hold on, let me see if I can find who voiced him real quick. Just real quick. Let's see if I can find it. Oh, it's not a guest star. Okay, editing, just correct me later. Whoever voices this guy does an amazing job. Like, he's a drill sergeant as you expect him to be, but he's also very funny. And not to mention, being a shark is also a cool design. So, he comes into the classroom and tells them about the grueling nature they're about to go through. And then he starts throwing people through the rooms when they start violating his rules. First one for talking, and the second one for eating. And they're both funny, especially the build up with that second one, which is just great. And then for highlight number 3, the driving course. I can't put the whole thing into one picture without it being, a very bad aspect ratio, but this is just a small little sliver of it. It is such a cool design, though. Like, there's like a toxic waste pit and spikes and fire rings. It's so cool. And then the next one is this dark joke, where during the training montage, SpongeBob runs through it, goes down through the pit, and then comes out a skeleton. Again, SpongeBob is so great at dark humor when he actually does it right. Like, it's so funny. And then next is when he's told to take the boat apart, and then he has to put it back together, but instead he makes a rocket ship. Jumping jellyfish. It's ridiculous. And then the next highlight, my pants. Yeah, Patrick's in this episode, and he's just hilarious. He doesn't get to do much, but it's hilarious. And then, yep, that's the last highlight. Overall, this is a fantastic episode, ruined by just one fact. The ending is depressing. About how Mrs. Puff is reinstated because, well, for one, it wasn't SpongeBob's fault they failed, it was the drill sergeant, because we don't see him actually training SpongeBob without the blindfold on, so, like, that's his own fault. You think he should have known that by now. But nope, he made that little mistake and turned into Destruction of the City, number 5052. And then Mrs. Puff is reinstated in the end, and it's a depressing ending that almost feels like a Mrs. Puff torture porn. Which is a shame, because the rest of this episode is so great. But it's still a 9 out of 10, it's still a fantastic episode, and if you haven't seen it yet, absolutely check it out if you haven't already. Well, that concludes this double review. Thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys tomorrow for Aquatic Neptune's Squidward is Fired. Should be a pretty good one. Till then, have a sponge-tastic day, and I'll see you next time. Peace.